Hello, viewers. I welcome us all to part two of our tutorial on how to write a lesson plan. In part one, we were able to understand what lesson plan is all about. We also look at the components involved in writing a lesson plan. In this part two, we shall be looking at three concepts that are paramount or that are a necessity in writing a lesson plan. The understanding of these three concepts will serve as a guide to us when we start writing a lesson plan, and it will help us to be able to write a professional lesson plan. So let's move in to what we have for today. For you to be able to understand how to execute each of the components I mentioned earlier, there are certain important things that you must take note of. And these important things you must take note of is that, one, you must have a good knowledge on Bloom's taxonomy. Secondly, you must have a very good knowledge on the domains of learning. And then thirdly, you must be knowledgeable on teaching skills, or let me say on teaching methods and strategies. The understanding of these three important points will help you to be able to have a good lesson plan. Let's take the first one, Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom taxonomy is a framework that categorizes educational objectives and describes different levels of cognitive complexity and learning outcomes. It classifies learning objectives into 6 hierarchical levels, each representing a different cognitive process. The levels from lower to higher cognitive complexity are as follows. We have remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and finally, creating. Creating is the highest, while remembering is the lowest. This is the hierarchical classification of the Bloom taxonomy. Creating is the highest level, while remembering is the lowest level in Bloom's taxonomy. So the remembering level, which is the lowest level, is the level that involves recalling or recognizing information. It includes tasks such as memorization, identifying, and recalling facts or information. So when a teacher sets a question that asks the students to identify, to recall, or to memorize, it shows that the teacher is asking them a question that is testing their remembering level under the cognitive domain. Then the next level after the remembering level is the understanding level. This level focuses on comprehending and interpreting information. It involves tasks such as explaining concepts, summarizing, and paraphrasing information. So at this level now, when the teacher asks questions that has to do with explain this, explain that, summarize this, or in your own words, what do you have to say about, you understand? So the person, that particular question is actually testing the understanding level of the student. Then the next one is applying. At this level, learners apply previously acquired knowledge or concept to new situations or solve problems. At this level, it involves tasks such as you see a teacher asking questions like using so formula, solve this. Where we find most of this thing is in physics. Using this as this, solve this. Applying the principle of this, do this. With the use of this equation, do that. So when such type of questions pop up, it is testing the applying level of the students, how well the students can be able to apply certain things, certain knowledge to a new concept. Then the next one after that is the analyzing. At this level, or let me say, the next one is the analyzing level. This level involves breaking down information into its constituent parts and understanding the relationship between them. It includes tasks. At this stage now, it includes tasks such as categorizing, comparing, and contrasting information. For example, if a teacher asks, what is the difference between a plant cell and an animal cell? You understand that for the student to be able to deduce the difference between a plant cell and an animal cell, he will first of all do what? Break down a plant cell and break down an animal cell by identifying all the things that are in a plant cell. Then go down to animal cell and identify all the things that are in animal cell. And then from there, he can now know those things that he found in plant cell that are not in animal cell and those that he found in animal cell that are not in plant cell, for him to be able to give the differences between them. So this is the analyzing level. So when you are asking a question that has to do with this, it is at a level of what? Analyzing. Then the next one we have is the evaluating level. This level requires making judgment or assessment based on criteria and evidences. It involves tasks such as critiquing, justifying, and appraising information or arguments. What are we saying in essence here? At this level now of evaluating, it is at this stage now that, like for those who are in English, you may be asked to read a novel and then they'll ask you to criticize this novel. So at that level now, the person is testing your evaluating level. The person is testing your evaluating level. Then he's trying you to criticize and say something about it. Or maybe you may watch a movie. At the end of the movie, the person will tell you, that the person who directed this movie did not direct it well. Or this movie is superb. You understand? That is evaluating level. So when, as a teacher, when you ask questions that involve the students to criticize or make judgment on certain things, then you are testing their evaluating level. Then the last in the hierarchy is the creating level, which is the highest level of the Bloom's taxonomy. This level involves generating new ideas. It also involves making new products or new perspectives. It includes tasks such as designing, inventing, and producing original work. Let's say, for example, now, as a teacher, you ask the student to draw. Okay, you say, let's say, for example, the person is in biology, and then you kind of, after you tell them, okay, draw a plant cell or draw an animal cell. At that stage, that question, draw, is at the highest level. That is creating level, telling the person to draw. So I why am I explaining all these levels of the hierarchical level of Bloom's taxonomy, you just need to understand them. Once you understand this hierarchical level of Bloom's taxonomy, it will guide you when selecting your objectives. It will guide you when selecting your objectives, and it will also guide you throughout the planning of your lesson. So, with this understanding of Bloom taxonomy now, we will be proceeding to the next point there, which is domain of learning. But before we move down to domains of learning, I want us to know that the Bloom taxonomy is often represented as a pyramid with the lower level, cognitive processes forming the foundation for higher level thinking. As learners progress up the pyramid, they engage in more complex cognitive activities that involve deeper understanding, critical thinking, and problem solving. That is to say, when a learner is just starting, he starts from ability for him to memorize things. You remember when you were still children, what they were teaching you that time is just how to memorize. Teaching you Edet live in Calabar. He is 8 years old. Then I can remember then when I was still in primary 2, primary 3, then if you ask me to point Calabar, I don't even know Calabar, but I can memorize it and I can read it to the very end. So at that level, the learner's major concern is at remember level. Then from remember level, I proceed to that level of understanding. At the level of understanding, I could be able to explain certain things. I can be able to even make some summaries and the rest of it. Then with time, I progress to applying, that I can be able to take a certain thing I did in the classroom and apply it outside. And I proceed again to the level where I can be able to analyze things. From analyzing, I can make evaluation, and then finally at the level where I can be able to do what? To create. So with the understanding of this now, you as a teacher, when making notes of lesson, you tend to understand whether the student you are teaching or the student you are setting that lesson plan for, have the student outgrown all this hierarchy. Because a situation whereby you are making a lesson plan that involves the student to create something, while the person's level, cognitive level, is still on understand, definitely is going to fail. And definitely is not even going to understand what you are teaching because he has not gotten to that level. So once you understand the type of the student you are teaching, with the help of the Bloom's taxonomy, you tend to understand how you select your objectives. Bloom taxonomy provides a structured way to set learning objective, design instruction, and assess students' learning. And it helps educators foster critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity in their students. We'll proceed to the next one, which is domain of learning. The domain of learning, also known as the three domains of educational objectives, are frameworks that categorizes the types of learning outcomes or goals that students can achieve. These domains are divided into three, and I know they are very popular and many of us know them. The first one is the cognitive domain. The second one is the affective domain. And then the third one is the psychomotor domain. The cognitive domain focuses on intellectual or mental skills and knowledge acquisition. It encompasses the development of thinking, understanding, and problem-solving abilities. The cognitive domain is often associated with academic subjects, and it includes objectives such as knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation, and so on. While the affective domain deals with the emotional, social, and value-based aspect of learning. It involves the development of attitudes, belief, and values, as well as the ability to interact effectively with others. The affective domain includes objectives such as, let's say, it includes receiving, responding, valuing, organization, characterization. When we talk about receiving here, it has to do with being open to and willing to listen to or accept new information or experiences. Then when we talk about responding has to do with demonstrating a willingness to actively participate and engage with others or in a task. When we talk about valuing, the valuing here has to do with developing belief, attitude, or opinions and internalizing them as part of one's own value system. Then when we talk about organization, it has to do with prioritizing or structuring values or beliefs in resolving conflict between them. Then we talk about characterization. Characterization has to do with acting consistently with one's value and demonstrating a strong sense of personal and social responsibility. So now, with the understanding of what the affective domain is, we will now look at the third one, which is the psychomotor domain. Psychomotor has to do with something that has to do with motor skills and coordination. So let's just say that the psychomotor domain involves the development of physical or motor skills and coordination. It encompasses actions, movements, and manipulative ability. The psychomotor domain includes objectives such as perceptions, set, guided response, mechanism, complex overt response, adaptation, origination, and so on. So when we talk about perception has to do with the senses to interpret and recognize stimuli. Then we'll talk about set here. Set has to do with one getting himself ready, or readying one's self mentally, emotionally, and physically to perform a skill or task. That is getting yourself ready, both emotionally, physically, to perform a task. Then the next one, which is guided response, has to do with imitation or imitating or following instructions to perform a skill or task. Then the next one, which is mechanism, has to do with performing a skill with increased proficiency and efficiency. Then the next one after that one is the complex overt response. This one has to do with demonstrating skilled performance in a smooth, accurate, and coordinated manner. Then after that, the next one, we have the adaptation, which has to do with modifying or adjusting a skill to different situations or contexts. Then finally, we have origination, which is creating or developing new movement or skill based on existing ones. So far I have told us that for us to be able to write a very good lesson plan, we have to first of all understand what Bloom's taxonomy is all about. And again, we need to understand the domain of learning. And then thirdly, we need to understand teaching method and strategies. With the knowledge of this learning domain and the Bloom's taxonomy, you tend to understand how to bring out the objectives. So with that knowledge now, we proceed to the next one, which is the teaching method and the teaching strategy. Under this teaching method, which is also referred to as specific approaches and techniques used by educators. So the next one we have now is the teaching method, which is teaching method and teaching. The next one we have now is the teaching methods and teaching strategy. So the next one we have now is the teaching method or teaching strategies. Teaching method has to do with how you teach in the classroom. How are you going to teach that thing in the classroom? When you enter the classroom, In what way are you going to present this lesson to these students that they will understand? In what way are you going to present this lesson to these students that they will understand? That is what teaching method is all about. So we have as many teaching methods as possible. So in your lesson plan, you are going to indicate the type of teaching you are going to use in teaching them. We have as many of them as possible. So you have the knowledge you have on teaching method will help you know what type of teaching method you are going to use. In your lesson plan, you are going to indicate it. There is a place where you indicate teaching method or teaching strategy. There, you're going to indicate whether you're going to teach them using lecture method, discussion method, inquiry-based learning method, problem-based learning method, experiential learning method, flipped classroom method, Socratic method, direct instruction method, Montessori method, questioning and reinforcement method, simultaneous variation method, field trip method, and so on. We have as many as possible. So it's not left for you to know which of the teaching methods you are making use of. Then if you are using more than one teaching method, it's still fine. It's good. So under the teaching strategy or teaching method, you will indicate all the teaching methods you intend to use in your teaching. So far, we're able to understand what a lesson plan is. We also looked into the components of a lesson plan. Then we also went ahead to look at some three basic important knowledge that we should have in order to write a lesson plan. We were able to look into Bloom's taxonomy. We also look into the domains of learning and also look at teaching method. So with this understanding now, we are now good to go to write a lesson plan. So the next video we'll be making, in the next video we'll be making, we will be using the components and the knowledge of all these things now that we just learn to make a lesson plan, which will make the lesson plan together in the next video. And for those who are not truly clear with what we did in this first video, just go through the video